Tonight's shiur is a continuation of last week, and it is called Adar, the month of joy, the mystical connection between Adar, Amalek, and Purim. Why is Adar the month of joy? We outlined last week very briefly that historically, that month was, that period is a very dark period in our history. We spoke about it last week. And we also mentioned that Adar says that, in fact, the divine letters, the configuration of the divine letters were meant to be the exact opposite of Nisan, the exact opposite of the proper order of the divine name Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, indicating that there was a time of immense concealment and darkness, spiritual darkness. And that could very well be that this is what Haman felt, because the sages tell us that Haman drew a lots, like a lottery. And he was very much a believer in luck and constellations and these different types of things. And he wanted to see, how is the luck of the Jewish people going to fall? And when the month of Adar, when the lot was drawn on the month of Adar, when to choose a date to remove and eradicate the Jewish people, he was thrilled. To be able to say that that Haman knew the configurations of God's name, I doubt it. But to be able to say that a person who was spiritual feels and is more sensitive to spirituality, and someone that is on the side of impurity feels concealment and impurity more and has some heightened level of sensitivity, I would say yes. For example, and this is something that I've spent some time investigating. We know that there is a concept of speaking to the souls, the dead souls. This is a very deep level of impurity, when people do seances and they do different types of what do you call it? Something board? Ouija. Is that what it's called? Ouija board. Is that an Iraqi word? Ouija board. Ouija board. Definitely not Moroccan. That I can guarantee you. So, these are different ways of communicating with the souls who are on the level of impurity. Because the souls that have entered the Garden of Eden, or even the process of cleansing, they cannot summons or associate with. But souls that have not been even allowed that ability to go through the cleansing process and then enter the Garden of Eden, they are very much related to the concept of impurity, and to be able to attach oneself to them or to communicate with them is prohibited, and is also causes an individual to become very deeply attached to the powers of impurity. The more a person does this with these Ouija boards or seances and all of these different types of things, the less he needs to do the Ouija board or the seances. The souls attach themselves automatically to him. Why? Because he's become very much attached to the power of impurity. He's much more attuned or sensitive. A regular guy like me and you, no soul speak to me, and also no one tells me anything. Nobody. In fact, my wife barely tells me anything. But the more a person is spiritually attuned, the more he feels, knows, understands, intuitive, whatever the case may be. So too conversely, the more a person attaches himself to impurity, the more he becomes sensitive to certain things that goes on. Therefore, it is highly probable that Haman felt a certain level of concealment that this month could mean for the Jewish people. And that's why he was elated that the lottery fell on Adar, in the month of Adar. And he said that on this month, Moshe Rabbeinu died. Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, is a neshama klalit, what's called a general soul, of which all of the souls of the Jewish people are attached to him. And therefore he viewed that as a good omen, since Moshe Rabbeinu passed in this month, almost this depicts the demise of the Jewish people. And the sages say, but he was not aware that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on that day. Which means to say that they do not discount the fact that there is some element to what perhaps Haman felt. Because there is a dimension of concealment in this month. But this is the beauty of the month. The beauty of this month is that things that seem so impossible and so improbable and so concealed and so dark can totally be overturned to become an opportunity for great joy and happiness and great godly revelation, miracles. What is the concept of birth? Concept of birth represents the essence, the immutable essence of an individual. That's the essence. When a person grows up, can grow this way, can grow that way, can make mistakes, but when a person is born, that's his essence. You're born with that essence, with that whatever quality that you have. Moshe Rabbeinu was absolutely and powerfully good. That represents the essence. And if then every Jew is attached to Moshe Rabbeinu, well, that then represents the essence of the Jew. Despite the fact that we may externally become attached and attracted to impurity and negativity and wrongful mistakes and sin and whatever have you, but the essence always remains pure. And therefore, that although Haman saw perhaps some darkness looming, hovering, as the advisors of Paro, the advisors of Paro advised Paro that they see a star looming, hovering over the Jewish people, and they see the sign of blood. And God overturned that, because what did they see? What did they see? They saw that the Jewish people will err and sin in the desert. And God overturned that into the Paschal, the blood of the Paschal lamb, and the blood of the circumcision, of which preceded that, and that merit stood them in good stead. As we say in a Brit Milah, that it is with your blood that you will live. And we say twice, corresponding to the two bloods, the blood of the Paschal lamb that the Jewish people put on the doorways, which is a great act of faith, which we discussed on previous occasions, and the blood of the circumcision. Let's move on. Furthermore, the constellation of the month of Adar, we didn't discuss this last week, did we? Is the fish. We didn't. The fish, Pisces, the two fish. What's the significance of that? The significance of that is that a fish is cold. The fish has no warmth like another animal. Another animal is warm. A fish is cold. Touch a fish is cold. Which represented, at least to Haman, an element of a cooling down of the Jewish people's connection and attachment to God. So he saw this as a great omen, as a great sign. Indeed, during this period, there was somewhat of a cooling down. And this is exactly what the objective of Amalek is all about, and the connection to this month. What is the objective of Amalek? To blur the facts. To blur the Metziut. How do you say the Metziut? The reality. The reality is that there is a God in the world, and God runs the world. And God is intimately associated with every single one of us, every dimension of our life, every aspect of our life. He knows, directs. And every aspect is directed by His love and care and concern for us. Despite that we may go through difficulties and whatever the case may be, All of this comes from God's divine grace and love for us and concern for us. Comes Amalek and throws a doubt. In fact, the very letters of Amalek spell numerically the Hebrew word for doubt, safek. That's what Amalek does. He throws a doubt. And as we discussed last week, the Jewish people had a doubt in the destiny of their own people. Was the redemption going to be? Wasn't the redemption going to be? Will there be a rebuilding of the second temple? Or won't there be, as we discussed last week? They were in doubt. They were unsure. And because of that, they decided to do, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. Go to the meal of Paro. And as we said, the sin was nehenu misudato. They didn't take part, they enjoyed the meal. Means to say that they in fact assimilated themselves to the mentality of Ahasuerus, that there will be no redemption, that there will be no second temple, and therefore make the best out of your situation. This is Amalek. He blurs the facts. He causes a person to become cold, to lose his burn and passion and flame for Judaism, to lose his faith, his conviction, to become blurred. And as the Gemara says, in Masechet Sotah, En Adam Hoteh Ela Im Nichnas Bo Ruach Shtut. A person does not sin. How can you sin against God? Only if the spirit of folly enters you. What is the spirit of folly? The spirit of folly is that he does not have a proper perception of reality, that God runs the world, and that God cares about every single one of our actions, and that every one of our actions are meaningful, powerful, and important, and in fact affect the whole universe. The fact that you keep Shabbat or doesn't keep Shabbat affects the whole universe. And it's not something that is up for choice, so to speak. It is so crucial to our existence. It is so crucial to the very reason why my soul came down to this world, and it affects the whole universe and the history of the Jewish people. So this is crucial stuff. But Amalek throws a doubt. Amalek clouds the reality. It's okay, it's not a big deal, I'm still 100% Jewish. Yes, you are. But remember, we discussed on a previous occasion that Yaakov Hebel Nahalato, the inheritance or the legacy of Yaakov, his attachment to God is like a rope. The stronger the rope, the safer it is, no? Just like a rope is made up of many strands, so to the rope of our inheritance, Jacob's inheritance, i.e. we, the children of Israel, the stronger our attachment to God, the stronger the rope, the stronger our attachment to God, the more healthier spiritually we are. And the sages say that this rope has 613 strands, which is the 613 commandments. Amalek tries to dissuade us from this reality. Amalek tries to dissuade us from understanding that our actions are meaningful and powerful and have immense significance. You can do what you like, so what's a big deal? So you eat this, so you eat that. It's nice. It's nice if you eat kosher. It's nice if you keep Shabbat. It's nice if you do this, and it's nice if you do that. So he blurs the reality to such an extent that he even tries to instigate you to entertain thoughts that in fact there are other powers, there are other deities, there are other gods. There are other influences in the world. Perhaps the greatest of all is our own ego and our own desire. In fact, the word El Aher, other God, is the same numerical value as Amalek. And as it says, and we will be reading in this week's parasha, and it's very important this Shabbat to listen to the reading of the parasha of Amalek. Asher karcha baderech, that ensnared you on the way, ensnared you physically because he tried to come and do battle and destroy the Jewish people, but ensnared you spiritually. How so? The word ensnare, which is used for coming, that Amalek came in battle against the Jewish people, is karcha. The root of that word is kar, which means cold, cool. He tried to cool your enthusiasm, your faith and belief in God. The Jewish people came out of Egypt. They were on cloud 9. We're invincible. We're invincible. Suddenly comes an Amalek. Hey, maybe we're not so invincible. Is our destiny assured? Is our destiny not assured? Will we enter the land of Israel? We won't. The land. We won't. Maybe we won't enter the land. All of a sudden, that security, that surety, was disturbed. That balance was disturbed, and that is one of the most harmful things. That our faith does not remain intact. The biggest problem of a nisayon, of a test or a trial, is our faith. Will our faith withstand this test or not? We all know. There are many tests that we go through. Sometimes these tests come in the form of how do you say ta'ava? A desire, a passion. I'm looking for another word. No, I'm looking for a nisayon anyway. There's a test that momentarily tests us, and we may pass it, we may fail. But we realize that it's a silly thing, and how can we fail? It's a momentary, we were caught by the passion of the moment. But then there is a test that we go through, be it a difficulty, an extreme difficulty, or be it a sickness, or be it a this, or be it a that, whatever the case may be. That tests our faith. And God forbid that we should ever fail that. And that's exactly what Amalek goes to the core. Amalek doesn't come and wave a flag of desire and temptation. Amalek goes to our very core, to our faith, and tries to undermine our faith. That's Asher Karcha. Comes to cool you down, cool your faith, cool your passion, cool your spiritual emotion. And that is the constellation of Dag, of the Pisces, of the fish, because it's cold. So as far as Haman's concerned, he picked a winner. He picked the right time. What he does not realize is that even when God's name is concealed, it is still God's name. And despite the fact that no matter which configuration of God's name, and no matter what the spiritual sustenance that flows down, whether it is a revelation or a concealment of God's name, we have the ability to overturn and to change it. And that is why Adar is a month of joy, because we can strengthen ourselves, strengthen our faith in understanding that no matter how difficult things may seem, no matter how impossible things may seem, we can overturn it. We can turn things over. And that empowers us. And that is reason for joy. I want to share with you something very, very interesting. In the book Magaleh Amokot, he speaks have you noticed in the Shema, in the Torah, or if you ever open up your mezuzah or your tefillin, you'll see the verse, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Ehad. The letter Ehad, Daled in the Ehad, the God is one. Hero Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. The last letter is very big. If you also have a look in the Torah, and you'll see the pasuk, Lo tishtahave le'el aher, you shall not bow to another God. Remember we said, El aher, another God, is the same numerical value as Amalek, that tries to come and change the reality, make us think that there are some other powers, or I'm a power, I can do what I want. When do we learn that we're not? When, God forbid, if we are set with sickness or disaster or something, calamity befalls us, we see how mortal we really are. We thought we were great, we were strong, we were this, we were successful, we were and one little thing, and we see how mortal we really, really are. But we fool ourselves, don't we? We know that we fool ourselves. That's Amalek. Fooling ourselves. So the word ahead, other God, the last resh, is also very big in the Torah. Have you wondered why the letter Daled and the letter resh is very, very big? In order never to allow for there to be a mistake or an error. You know the difference between a Daled and a resh is very, very small, don't you? Have a look on the board. Daled, resh. Very small, like a little strudel here. If you write it small, you can, from a distance, there could be an error over here. There's no room cannot be any room for error as far as the Jew is concerned. No room for error. God is one. He's one. And not, God forbid, that God is, because they're spelled very similar. Ehad is spelled Aleph, Het, Daled, right? God is one. Aher, God forbid, another God, God forbid, is Aleph, Het, which letter? Resh. Very, very similar. Very easy to... When you write it big, there's no room for error. And that's why these letters are big. And the whole function of the evil inclination, or Amalek, or the power of impurity, is to be able to cause the interchanging of the letters, God forbid. They're very small. It's a very fine line. Our lives are like a tightrope. It's a very fine line between, sometimes we walk on the side of faith, and very easily sometimes we can walk on the side of doubt very easily. Don't mix up those letters. Don't change those letters. And as the Midrash says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Im ata oseh ha'ot daled keresh. If you, God forbid, interchange and make the letter Daled, God forbid, into a resh, ata mahriv et kol ha'olam, you destroy the whole world. Because you cause a confusion of the reality. Not to have faith is a destruction of our life. To interchange this, to mix this up, to be confused, the unity of God, is a destruction of our lives. And therefore, this is very much connected to the month of Adar. If you have a look, the month of Adar is what? Is Aleph, Daled, and Resh. Correct? What is Aleph? Aleph is Alufo Shel Olam, the master of the world. When we are imbued with a faith and a belief in the master of the world, then the Daled remains a Daled and the Resh remains a Resh. And we don't cloud things. So Adar contains within it those two letters, Daled and Resh, that there should be never any confusion. And what's really interesting is when we will read this Shabbat and we will say that we must we must remember what Amalek has done, dor, from generation to generation. What did Amalek do? Try to conceal the difference between the Dalet and the Resh. Dor means generation to generation. But how do you spell dor? Dalet and Resh. Those two letters that, so to speak, so easily can be interchanged. This is what Amalek wants to do. You must remember Amalek. And which month did the sages institute that we read the story of Amalek? Because according to the Torah, you can read it any time of the year and fulfill the mitzvah. specifically on Adar, because Adar has the word Daled and Reish in it. And that is the time that Haman, which was a descendant of Amalek, that is a time that we must refocus and strengthen those letters of Daled, that the Daled should always remain Daled of Ehad, and the letter Reish should always remain Reish, and not be interchangeable. What's interesting to note is, I made a little bit of a calculation. The word Dor, generation to generation, is 408. Dor is, Daled is 4. Reish is 200, it's 204. Dor is 408. And Hashem says to Moshe, Ktov zot zikaron basefer. Write this as a commemoration in the book of the Torah. Ktov zot, write this. What's this? Zot is also the numerical value of 408. Do I need to write it out? I'll write it out. Ktov zot zikaron basefer. God says, write this as a commemoration. Zot. It's moving, so. So Zayin is 7, Aleph is 1, equals 408, which is the numerical value of Dor. From generation to generation, we can never err. We can never blur the letter of Daled and make it a Reish, or the Reish make it a Daled, Dor. Which leads me to another point. A very interesting point. Give me 1 second. Listen to this. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Lazar, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Harotzeh shitkayemu nechasav, someone who wants his, how do you say nechasav, give me another, his assets, to increase, Yita Bahem Adar, he should plant in the month of Adar. Plant in the month of Adar. Why is planting in the month of Adar so good? What's so good about planting in the month of Adar? Shene'emar, it says in a pasuk, Adir Bamarom Hashem. Great in the heavens is God. A hint how great. The power of God is so great, is immense. Adir means wonder, is, how do you say Adir? What's a good translation for Adir? Huh? Yeah, great. Great Bamarom Hashem is God. The power of God is great in the heavens. How much more so over here? Adir, the word Adir contains within it the letters Adar. So there's a hint that in Adar, even though it's a month of, so to speak, concealment to a certain degree, but within it contains the power of God, as we see clearly in the story of Purim. On the one hand, godliness was so concealed, but yet on the other hand, when the Jewish people decided to dedicate themselves selflessly to the Torah, as we discussed last week, the whole concept of Simcha and Hamisha, the 5 things, remember last week? The 5 things that saved the Jewish people, or the 5 elements of the Jewish people that were saved is reason for simcha, and the 5 bad occurrences that happened on Adar, mema'atim besimcha, in Av, the bad things that happened in Av, the 5 things remove the simcha. Hamisha is the same letters as simcha. So too over here, Adar, even though it could have been a time of concealment, became a time of immense revelation. Why? Because of our awareness. We changed our awareness. We changed our perception of reality. It changed the whole configuration. To the extent that Rizal says that in fact it altered the configuration of God's name to include in it a bit more mercy, and it became the letters of Hey, Hey, Yud and Vav. Hey, Hey, of course, is the letter Hey is more feminine, and the other Hey again, so therefore that refers to a bit more mercy intermingled in that month. Still, what is the connection between Adar, planting, and Adir Bamarom Hashem? It seems a bit far-fetched. No, Adar is similar to the word Adir. Great is the power of Hashem up above. Oh, so we stick it together. Good time. It doesn't work like that. Everything in Judaism is precise and exact. Why? Because the letter, the word, the month of the month of Adar is spelled like this: Aleph, Daled, and Resh. Daled in Hebrew refers to dal, something that is not the Iraqi dal, but maybe it is because poor people maybe ate dal. Dal in Hebrew means poor, impoverished, poor. Yeah, so maybe the poor ate dal, which is a poor man's food. Then there is Reish. The letter Reish is connected to the concept of Rash. Rash means also an expression of Kedalim ucherashim dafaknu delatecha. We knock on the door as poor and impoverished. So the letter Daled refers to poor. Reish, Rash refers to impoverished. And then there is Aleph. So Aleph, Dalet, and Resh. Dalet refers to impoverished. Shin, poor. Shin refers to, beg your pardon. Dalet and Resh refers to the concept of poverty, of poor, which signifies an element of Adar that is associated with a spiritually impoverished level. But when we recognize the Aleph of Adar, the Aleph refers to Alufo Shel Olam, master of the world. The Aleph is the numerical value of Aleph is what? 1. Aleph. The way the letter is in its normal fashion. Aleph is 1. Now if we take the letter Aleph and we look at the letter Aleph, what comprises the letter Aleph? We see a Yud on the top and a Yud on the bottom and a Vav. So Yud on top is 10. The Vav across is 6. The Yud on the bottom equals 10 equals 20, which is the numerical value of God's name. So when we remain focused, and when we understand that everything that we have only comes from God, we are absolutely impoverished, and everything comes from God, that is a sign of blessing. That is a sign of mazal. That is a sign of simcha. If we can ever reach that level of humility, which Adar has the power to infuse us with, because remember, Adar is connected to who? Moshe Rabbeinu. Who was the humblest of all men? Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything that he had, he didn't attribute to himself. If we can reach a smidgen of that level of humility and of attachment to God and dependence of God and understand, that is a turning around. That is a turning around of exactly the opposite of what Amalek wants us to understand. That we are a big mitziyut, we are a big essence for ourselves, we're a big existence for ourselves, we're good, we're great, we're successful, we should do what we want, what we desire, what pleases us. There are other forces and powers in the world, etc., etc. But if we do the exact opposite of that, then what we're able to achieve is that Adir B'marom Hashem, we see the greatness and loftiness of God and we recognize this, then indeed, what ends up happening is that Adar becomes a force of joy, of happiness, and of success. Because the greatest success that we can ever reach financially or otherwise is when we have faith in God. If we have true faith in God, that's the essence of our success. And that's why the Gemara says, he who wants his assets to be blessed, to increase, to be successful, let him plant in Adar, because Adar holds the secret. Yes, Adar has a potential for negativity or concealment, for spiritual impoverishment and poverty. But it also has the concept of humility. You know, there are many things that are related, come in the same basket. That could be used for good, could be used for bad. When a person gives up hope, it's a false sense of humility, isn't it? But when a person has confidence, he's confident who he is, what he is, he's confident that whatever Hashem, that his actions are significant, yet he's humble about it, yet he understands that everything comes from God, that's a proper sense of humility. So Adar can have that both side of the scale. Adar can have that giving up hope, God forbid, like what Amalek tries to instigate into our heart, or a level of humility that is dependence upon God. And that changes the whole dynamics of Adar. And that's exactly what happened in Adar. Mishenichnas Adar, marbim besimcha. Why? Because we recognize when Adar enters, we increase in joy, and that is a month of joy, because we understand that we can turn things, that we have the power to turn things from the lowest level, even spiritually, even when the divine name is, so to speak, opposite, that connotes a level of spiritual concealment and darkness and uncertainty, we can turn it around to surety, to purity, to hope and to faith. And that is the greatest joy of all. And this is what one of the great sages says in a book called Ma'or Einayim. He says this is the beauty of Adar. Why? Because Adar has two components to it. One component is the Aleph, which is God's name, or a reference to God, Alufo Shel Olam, and the other is Dar. What does Dar mean? Dwell. That God dwells in this world. When we recognize that God dwells in this world in a real fashion, that God is not just something transient and abstract, but in fact that God is intimately, so to speak, invited to this world, to our lives, in a real, tangible way, that's Adar. And if I may venture to suggest that this is the beauty of Purim and Adar. Why it is so full of joy, why it is so full of happiness. We discussed in one of our lectures a good couple of years ago the difference between Hanukkah, the miracle of Hanukkah, and the miracle of Purim, and why the sages tell us that all of the festivals will pale in insignificance compared to the festival of Purim. We discussed that once, you remember? So we're not going to discuss it tonight. So there's a quality of Purim that somehow outweighs and outstrips all of the other festivals. In fact, the holiest day of the year is which day? Yom HaKippurim. What does Kippurim mean? Yom Ke-Purim, a day that is akin to Purim. It's similar to Purim, which means to indicate that however holy Yom Kippur is, it is only akin, it is only similar to Purim, which means that the spiritual loftiness that can be achieved on Purim in a way can outstrip and outshine even Yom HaKippurim, Why? Because the concept of what Adar represents. Adar represents Aleph, Dar. Aleph is the master of the world. Dar lives, breathes, resides in this world. Our objective is to be able to reveal the divine will. And the divine will is, as it says in the Midrash, Nitava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyot lo dira batachtonim. The Almighty desired that He reside intimately. He will be revealed and felt, not in the holy heavens, but even down here below. And that is our objective, to reveal godliness in every physical aspect and dimension of our existence. So why Yom Kippur is very great. We fast, we seek closeness to God, detachment from the physical world. That's important from time to time. But the desire of God is not detachment from the physical world. The desire of God is that we actually reside, exist, live in this physical world and recognize God in every physical dimension. And this occurs very much so on Purim. Purim represents this to a great degree. You know why? Was Purim a miracle or not? Was Hanukkah a miracle or not? Which miracle was greater, that of Hanukkah or that of Purim? Why? Why was it a greater miracle? All right, so the saving of the body of the Jewish people, Hanukkah was the saving of the spirit of the Jewish people, correct? But where did we see the miracle more evident? In Purim or in Hanukkah? I'll explain. On Hanukkah we find that they came to light the menorah. They only had enough oil. It's a significant miracle because they wanted to light the candle. The candelabra is a big symbol in our heritage. Everything that's pure, it symbolizes wisdom, symbolizes Torah. They didn't want to disrupt that. It's a big symbol. So they came to light the menorah, but they only had one jug to last one day. What are we going to do? To produce new pure olive oil takes another 7 days. What are we going to do? They decided to light it anyway. And they lit it. And what happened? A miracle happened. Clear and open miracle. Another clear and open miracle happened. What's that? The few, the weak, fought the many. You know, the ancient Greek Assyrian Empire was massive. Who are you little tchotchkes to come and fight? Yet they vanquished them. They destroyed them. What happened on Purim? Happened to be that the queen was Jewish. And Haman wanted to destroy the Jewish people. So the queen says, listen, I want to make a meal. And the king says, yes, anything that you want. You just tell me what you want. I want you and Haman to come to the meal. And all of this set of coincidences that have come together is what the miracle of Purim all about. Very easy to read the story and say, where's the hand of God? For this very reason, in fact, the name of God is not even mentioned in the Megillah. Because there is room, God forbid, to err and think, oh, well, things happen. The Dalet and the Reish could very easily in the miracle of Purim be confused, can they not? Can we not easily say, well, so what? So the queen, she was Jewish and she told her, and Haman came, and he was anyway suspicious of Haman because he comes along the night before and he says, I want to honor someone. And then Haman says, well, the best way to honor someone that you like very much, give him your crown, give him your horse. My crown, my horse. And what's he doing here, coming here anyway in the middle of the night in his eagerness? All of these set of circumstances, if you read the Megillah, it just seems to be all events that could happen. Very easily we can confuse the Dalet and the Reish. But when you are imbued with faith, you can easily turn that and see the divine hand clearly evident there. And that's the objective. Hanukkah, it's very easy. You don't have to need a big spiritual IQ to recognize that God saved you. But you need some spiritual maturity in the time of Hanukkah. Purim, I beg your pardon. And that's very important. And that's where God really, really resides. That's where God is really, really relevant. When you make him relevant, when you recognize God in your daily activities and the accidents or the occurrences or the coincidences, that's no coincidence, the hand of God. That's clearly the hand of God. Aleph Dar, where the Aleph, the Alufo Shel Olam, the master of the world, clearly exists in your world. And that's your reality and that's your perception. This is what the creation of the world is all about. Now I want to venture and show and finish with this, something very interesting. The battle, the weekly battle of clearing the board. Hey Aaron, give me a hand, man. Come on. Take the other one. Start rubbing. Clear it up over here. Forget it. Sit down. Okay. Done. What do I want to show? Mitzvah. Torah. What do we find common with these two things? The letters Vav and Hey. The letters Vav and Hey, we learned on previous Shurim, are the lower letters of God's name. Right? What are the high letters of God's name? Yud and Hey. They refer to a greater revelation of godliness. Where do you find them? Achila. Eating. Shtiya. Drinking. Lina, sleeping. What's the common denominator? Yud and Hey. We find that in our eating and in our sleeping and in our daily occurrences, there you can find a deeper dimension of God. So when the Torah, when our eating and sleeping and drinking are imbued with mitzvah and Torah and they come together, it spells Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, God's name. But if you can introduce godliness, not only in the synagogue, not only on Yom Kippur, but even on Purim when you're celebrating, you're having a drink and with your friends, and you can see the divine hand, and that you introduce godliness into your daily functions, into your eating, your sleeping, and your drinking, and how you conduct yourself in your mundane activities, that is even a greater revelation of godliness. And in fact, that's the very purpose of creation. And that's what Adar means. Adar is Aleph, Dalet. God has to become real and relevant in your home, in your life, where you live. And there is no greater reason for joy than that. Because that's the essence of creation. And if you can achieve that, you achieve the purpose of creation. And that's why when Mashiach comes, all the festivals that refer to different miracles refers to a certain level of detachment from the world, does it not? Purim refers to a very intimate association with the world. That's what the whole creation of the world is all about. That type of miracle where the miracle could easily be confused with coincidences, occurrences. And that's why Purim is so unique and so special. And that's why the month of Adar, you do things in the month of Adar with the right sense of reality, it is successful. You plant, you do a physical business venture in the month of Adar imbued with the Aleph, with the Alufo Shel Olam, with the Master of the world, that He enriches us, and that we are humbled before Him. This is cause for immense great joy. When you are imbued with faith of God, then you overcome that which Amalek sought to destroy and rot within your heart. And then the Daled and the Reish, there is no confusion. And that is the Adar, the Aleph in the Daled and the Reish. There's no confusion. And then there is Dor, which is the numerical value of Ktov Zot Zikaron. Write this in the book, this, what's this, the whole lesson that we learnt about. What Amalek represents. What Adar represents, that the possibility of darkness, yet finding the light within the darkness. Overturning the darkness into light. Finding faith amidst the darkness. Still having faith. There's no greater joy than that. There's no greater accomplishment than that. And that is the greatest miracle of all. And that is why when Mashiach comes, the festival of Purim will outshine in that dimension or that aspect all of the other festivals. Is everything understood? I know I tried to fit in and cram in a lot. I could have just taken more time to explain, but we ran out of time. And there was also another dimension of the shiur, but we'll stop here.